You are actually the most polite actress I have ever met in my life. Also, I want to tell you that I've learned so much from you on set, and I feel like in just 1 month of set, it was just like making like 5 years of drama because you made me grow up so much, and I love you like crazy. Like crazy.
So much.
Oh, I swear to God.
I'll give you the money for that later.
Yeah,
That was
thank
good. Good work. Good work.
It was 1,000.
Hi friends, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. There's been so much happening and I had to do a Sunday video because I got some exclusive tea for you guys about what happened behind the scenes on It Ends With Us and why people that have worked with Justin in the past, as well as those that worked on the set, are shocked that this lawsuit has gone this far because of the amount of evidence that is in this case. And I'm talking like mountains of evidence that Wayfarer and Justin have. And we're very meticulous about documenting because of how difficult Miss Blake was. And they knew that this might be coming. So to say they're prepared is an understatement. And I want to just start this off by saying this comes from someone that used to work for Wayfair for over 4 years. She's a director and a producer, and her name is Crystal Cornelson. And she worked for Wayfair for said over 4 years. She actually reached out to me on Instagram to give me her insight about what it's like to work with Justin, what it's like to work with Jamie, and the entire team behind Wayfair. And she was one of the only women that worked on the set as far as like behind the camera as a director or producer, because in this world, you won't find a lot of women producers or directors. She was one of the only women that worked at Wayfair at the time behind the camera as either a director or a producer. So she didn't work on the set of this film, but she has a lot of experience with Justin and the Wayfair team. And then also a separate source that is connected to the production that I had an opportunity to speak with about what it was like to work with Blake and how awful it was for them. So, I want to talk with you and start this off by sharing something that was shared back on Reddit in August. And some people, I think Candace Owens found this and she brought it to the attention of people maybe a couple months ago. And I want to start this here because what is in this post is actually reiterated to me by a separate source. And as far as this post, there was speculation. Did it come from Jed Wallace? The answer is no, there was no smear campaign. So here is what the post said. It was posted back in August in the Colleen Hoover Reddit. I'm obviously using a throwaway, but I know someone who worked on the movie for most of its run who would have gotten these details piping hot, not some grapevine situation. They told me firsthand what they know, and I'll give you bullet points. Supposedly, Blake felt that Justin made her uncomfortable on set. One instance in particular, they said, was that Justin told Blake she looked sexy in what she was wearing on set. I don't know the context around it. Apparently, Justin wasn't happy with the original editor's cut of the movie, so he hired his own team to do his version of the movie. Blake wanted to do her own version of the movie as a result, but Sony said no. Blake goes to Sony and threatens to go to the New York Times with a story that says Justin was sexually harassing her on set. They don't let her have her own version. Sony freaks out and says, okay, whatever you want. Justin is banned from the Sony lot. I don't think forever, but for the run of the movie, but I could be wrong. Blake hires T Swift's music video editors to do her version while she's filming in Italy for something. Blake has a friends and family screening to get thoughts with lots of A-listers, Ben Affleck, Bradley Cooper, I think, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone is like, this movie makes no effing sense. Blake realizes she needs to hire an experienced film editor to fix it. Blake uses a T Swift song in the movie that the studio loves having in there. T Swift finds out that the original composer for the movie is someone she worked with in the past that was mean to her, and she says it's either me or him. Sony fires the composer to keep the T Swift song. I think that's everything I know. That went around Reddit, and people were like, oh, okay. You know, it was in the Colleen Hoover subreddit, and maybe unless you were someone that was inside Colleen's subreddit, you might have seen this at the time, but Candace Owens kind of put a spotlight on it a couple months ago. And I'm bringing this to you because what I was given is reminiscent of a lot of that, although the sources now are starting to put things together, and they believe that Taylor Swift, as far as like getting the composer fired, I don't think they think she had anything to do with that. And Justin doesn't state in his lawsuit that Taylor actually was involved in the composer getting fired. So that part, although it might have been said by Blake, was more than likely a lie. Okay. And then I want to just share one other thing from a separate person on the subreddit team, Justin Baldoni. Woohoo! I love you guys. They said, I have no doubt Blake thought it was harassment. Just they had a level of intimacy that they didn't. For example, calling her sexy. She didn't want to wear a costume that the costume designer had picked out. She would bring her own outfits from home and delay production for hours. On this particular day, they were far behind. She put on something from home. He said something like, I'm not sure, it looks a little frumpy. She got very offended, frumpy, seeing he pissed her off. And now production was going to be delayed many more hours. He said, no, it's great. You look sexy. And then she said, sexy. It's all stuff like that. She was looking at it through a lens. He thought they were closer than they were. Downvote away. I really don't care. Before you come at me, I agree the PR women texts were awful. Okay. So that was when the first lawsuit hit. Now, we know from Justin's amended complaint that the sexy comment wasn't exactly as described in that. But again, I want to share this with you because this is stuff that's been out on Reddit, and this can be kind of used to like reiterate some of what I was told by my source. And then others was, oh, and one more I would just remember. She undermined Justin all the time with directing. Sometimes she would stop the scene mid-shot and move his head so it was at a different angle. She was very demeaning with him and basically tried to direct the movie herself. The friend said the editor could really if they put together outtakes of various scenes where she was being insanely inappropriate on set. I sound like a Justin apologist, and I'm not. I just think PR is working both ways here. The New York Times article was clearly really biased. And another one was she held up production all the time with various things. A lot of the time upset about the wardrobe that she picked out. She was constantly rewriting the script and refusing to do the script as written. The friend said that she was just totally unprofessional. Then she demanded to recut the movie and made it worse. There were other things too. I'll go outside and see if my neighbor friend can remind me. The hate that she got was because of how she acted. All that being said, if it actually the SH happened, that's awful. Okay. So that again came out a couple months ago after the lawsuits were filed. But that was again someone that had a neighbor that was connected to the set. So there have been some people from the sets or that have worked on the set that have been coming forward and doing it publicly. And then there's been a lot of these like leaks through Reddit. And I'll say, like, the person that I spoke to was not comfortable going on record and was specifically very cautious about sharing information because they don't want it to get tied back to them in any way. And I understand why, because this is the way that I understand what happened here and the way that it was described to me is that what Blake did is that through the process of the film, and she basically tried to erase everything from Wayfarer and insert her own people into the movie, okay? And so some of the people that were from Wayfarer, some of them were able to still work and others were fired, right? And those that were still worked and still had a close proximity to her, they don't want to be outed because she's apparently a malignant narcissist. That was what I was told. So I did a post on my Instagram and I shared some of their details, and I'll kind of like outline some of the things that I said and try to provide you a little bit more context. Okay. So here were some of the bullet points from the source from the set. It said Blake Lively was a nightmare on set and she absolutely is a malignant narcissist. So one thing they made a point of saying was that Blake is an unreliable narrator. She says that in the movie, but it's true. It's hard to know when working with her what she says is true or not because she lies so much. And you catch her in the lie, and then as soon as you catch her in the lie, she's lying about something else. And they almost described it as like pathological in the lying. So it makes it hard for people to understand like what's true from what's reality when it comes to her. And because she uses lies as a form of manipulation, that it's very challenging for people to work with her because she just makes stuff up. And so anything that you do with her could turn into her using it against you in some way, which makes it very uncomfortable for people to be around her. The other point was there was no sexual harassment, and they were adamant about that. They said that the cameras never stopped rolling in between the takes. Often scenes were shot multiple times because Blake didn't like something. During scenes, videos show Blake trying to direct Baldoni and take over the set. Now, if you remember those other posts I just showed you, that's what she did. Like where they were saying she would like stop and like move his face and try to speak over him and try to redirect him. And the way it was described to me is that there are hours and hours and hours and hours of footage, raw footage from the filming of this movie. And so you have the cameras never cut, meaning the cameras remained on and then they just keep it on in between takes so that they don't have to get everything, warmed up again, right? So she doesn't recognize or maybe understand that a lot of the fighting that was happening between her and Baldoni is all captured on camera. And so when Brian Friedman says that he's confident about her and that Justin is withholding information because of how embarrassing it would be for her, they said it's true. Like they said that if this goes to trial, it will be very bad for Blake because the jury will be able to see the way that she treated Baldoni and the people on the set. They'll see her being argumentative, inappropriate, condescending, patronizing, rude, arguing, not taking direction, and making things last way longer than they need to. And it was clear that she wanted control of all of it. And that this concept that Justin had any control over her, they said it's nonsense. And the former Wayfair employee that I spoke to that worked with him for years said that Justin is the most harmless person you'll ever meet. That the guys at Wayfair, they're all really into their faith, but they don't push it on anyone. But they're very harmonious, they're very respectful. And the way that she described it was like they are very straight laced, very straight laced. And so he would never hit on another woman because he's married and he's like committed to his wife, and that's very important to him, and he's very aware of like that line. So this concept that he would cross a boundary with her, they said no way. They said like the way that it was described about things he would have said or conversations that would have had, they said no way. Blake is a very dominating and domineering woman, and he's a little bit more passive and appeasing. They said like he wants to make everyone happy. So they said harmless, absolutely harmless, kind, considerate, positive, very positive people, and really take people's like feedback to heart. And she said that this has been devastating for Justin. Like he's crushed, completely crushed. And his whole family is just devastated by all of this. That gets to this point. Blake patronized and belittled people and would often mock benign things, which she found hysterical. She's detached from reality. So I think a good point would be like when Justin showed the dancing scene and she's claiming sexual harassment happened during that scene. And yet in that same scene, she mocks his nose and tells him to get a nose job and to take like a health care or a doctor month or something, an insurance month, and get his nose fixed. So those are the kinds of things that like she would say to people. She's very much a nepo baby. That's how it was described to me. She doesn't live in reality. Like she lives in a world where she's had everyone tell her from a very young age that she's great and she's perfect and she's like the next big thing and that she should be able to have things and be given things and it's her right to have things. And then she's also so disconnected from the real world. Minor things that we would take for granted, she finds hysterical because she's never seen these things before. She generally has an air of herself that she's better than people, and she's not afraid to minimize and distract, belittle people. And she, from the jump, very much was like that from day one on the set with them. That's what I was told. And there's documented evidence of that. She could not accept her role as actress and constantly fought with Justin. I think I said that. It's all on camera and it won't look good for her. The insider says Blake is a fool to take this to a jury because she will look terrible. Yeah. No more explanation needed. There's absolutely no footage of Blake ever stating that she felt harassed or told anyone that she ever felt uncomfortable. It's actually the opposite. People on set had to tell Blake to take direction and stop interfering. So she was the hard one to deal with on the set. She showed up late. She overran budgets. She called in sick. She would change what she wanted to do on the set. She changed what her lines were. She changed what her clothing was. It was like whatever she wanted, she got. I asked them, I said, I still can't understand why she did this. I don't know why she took over this film. It doesn't make sense to me. And their gut feeling was because of the way that she leveraged Taylor throughout the movie and leveraged her proximity to Ryan and belief that only Ryan is the good one, like Ryan's the only one that can make good movies. And so we need to bring in Ryan's team because Ryan's team will make it better. Does that make sense? Like she believes that this movie's okay, but with Ryan, it would be like 100 times better. That was kind of the sense I got from what they were saying. And they said that because her best friend, Taylor, is like a bona fide superstar and probably the most famous celebrity in the world at this moment, and her husband is also equally as powerful, they think that she saw this opportunity and she saw that she could insert herself via the constant threats and the false allegations of sexual harassment in order to get what she wanted so that she could be at their level. They truly think it was about her thinking that this was going to be her moment where it's going to be my movie. I'm going to take this on. I'm going to become that next thing. I'll be as good as, you know, Taylor. I'll be as good as my husband. I won't be in their shadows anymore. That's kind of how they thought of her and her wanting it. And she would, because she wanted it so badly, she was willing to resort to any length to get it, which included constant threats and constant belittling and disruptions and the false sexual harassment claims. She was a nightmare. If it's true that she threatened to go to the New York Times and accuse Baldoni of SH if she did not get the final edit, and Sony caved to salvage the movie. So, one of the questions I asked, and a lot of you guys ask, is why did Sony keep caving? Why did they keep giving in to her? And here's what I was told. And a lot of this is in the timeline of relevant events, if you go through his timeline of relevant events. But during that during that process, Blake hadn't signed the contract yet. Blake was leveraging her relationship with Taylor to try to get Taylor's music in it. She fired the composer and lied and said that Taylor was the reason why the composer was fired. She fired them because if she brought in her own composer, then she'd be able to get the PGA credit because part of being producer means you're also doing the musical side of things and directing because it's two separate things and edit. So she'd be able to apply then for the PGA credit. But then she lied and used Taylor as the reason for why she was firing the composer. And that's point 8 that I put on here. And so when you talk about the music in this film, when Taylor made a public statement and she was like, I was one of 19 people that licensed songs. There was no score for this film. Every movie usually has like background music and it's not words or songs because songs kind of take away from the seriousness of the dialogue. And, you get a song that has words in it and then you have dialogue with words and it creates an incompatible listening and audio experience. And so often the underscore or I guess the overscore or whatever the music is usually instrumental. And the original score was going to be instrumental and more like orchestral because they wanted to not get away from the seriousness of the topic and they wanted to stay away from the poppy music because they felt it would sort of diminish the content of the film and make it appear less serious. So the reason why they had to use so many songs is because the composer that she did hire never finished a actual score. So instead, all of the music is licensed music that has lyrics. And because they had so much licensed music, they had to play so much of the licensed music in the movie. So you got so many montages and music was added in places where it didn't make sense. And that's why the music in the movie is really awkward. And as far as how she was described in the fact, like, of how she wanted to take over the film. And this Blake's not a very smart person, I guess. She's very manipulative and she's very scheming and she plots and she lies. But as far as knowing how to do a lot of things, she doesn't know how. And so she was just described as very manic, barking orders at people. She had no clear vision of what she wanted. She had no idea about the film itself because she doesn't understand how to edit. She doesn't understand how to direct. She doesn't understand how to produce. It created just chaos. And she was so inappropriate to people because of that. Like she would have all of these ideas about what she thought she wanted, but none of it actually would make sense put all together. And when it came to the final cuts of the film, the one thing that, in the timeline of relevant events, you hear about how she did a cut and it scored really bad and she did it for her friends and family. Video in that post I showed you, it said like people saw the cut and they were like, "What? This doesn't make sense." So that's what I was told. Like her cut were before she was forced to put back in the majority of Justin's cut into hers, her film was unwatchable. Didn't make sense to people at all. When they watched it, they couldn't understand what had happened. And they didn't know what they were watching. It was just unwatchable. The movie, if it would have been released as is, would have or it tanked the film. Because of that, she was forced by Sony to put in a good portion of Justin's scenes to ensure that they made money on the film. But this was done, and then she did her second screening where she had to add back all that stuff because it was so unwatchable. And after the second screening, she still performed low. And so her cut wasn't going to be released. It was going to be Justin's cut. And so because she lost, then that's when she took over the Book Bonanza stuff. And I guess when she was talking in Book Bonanza about, her cut and she brought it on a plane and all of that, it was never, they were always going to show a part of the movie, but they were going to show Justin's cut at Book Bonanza. And what changed was that she overrode them and said, "We're showing my cut." And that was done intentionally so that once people saw her cut, and that was what the fans had seen, he couldn't have his cut reintroduced because those fans had already seen it. It was a way for her to like solidify that her cut was the one that was released. It's diabolical if you think about it. I asked Wayfarer, and she said that Justin has always had really good casting in all of his documentaries and all of his films that he's made. Like he's had very solid casting and casting directors that have worked to cast all of the films that he's made. When it came to this, he was with WME at the time. So the casting director did an interview, and then this kind of tracks with what this person was saying to me, but they believe that Blake was added because at the time he was represented by William Morris Endeavor, which is the talent agency, and so was Blake. So Sony had specific people they worked with, but because Justin's rep and is repped by WME, they were going to look for another WME actress for her role, okay, for Lily. And so they had a short list based on that of who's repped by them. And then they wanted an established actress. They didn't want someone that was going to be brand new for this role because they needed someone that could, anchor a whole movie. You need to have a draw for the film. And she was cast. And initially at that time, yes, there was thoughts about the characters being aged up, but really that whole aged up process got changed due to her casting because nothing in the script really matched that the characters were really aged up outside of the characters were older and that Ryle had his own apartment and a penthouse the whole film. That was it. Everything else was basically the same. And Ryle wasn't a resident, he was a full-blown neurosurgeon. But those honestly could have been very easy changes in the film. We don't really know if they actually did the age up for this, but they said, having knowing Justin, they kind of speculated that Sony probably wanted Blake and WME probably wanted Blake because it was going to be like her comeback movie and they need to get her in work. So it was like, okay, so Blake is going to be your Lily. And he sort of just went along with it and appeased them, even if he might not have wanted it. And they said that what they know about Justin, had it been his own choice, he probably wouldn't have cast Blake Lively because of just her overall reputation in the industry. And if you notice in the timeline of relevant events, they did mention that they cast her despite the fact that they were concerned about her reputation. And the wind, that's a whole nother conversation for another day. Jenny Slate is also with WME. Brandon Sklenar is now with WME. So you have a lot of WME cast in the film, and that's not accidental. Blake was manic. Blake was horrible, mean. Her cut of the film was terrible. It, as released, the film was not complete because the score was not done. Even what's out in the theaters, it's an incomplete score to this day. And so when they really do talk about the harm that she did to this film, it's the proof is in what was released. Like that was the best they could get it to get released. That was the best they could do. And it was not what he wanted. And it was not what Wayfair wanted. And it definitely completely altered it. And from the way that it was relayed to me is that this film could have done so much better. It did really well in the box office, but it could have done so much better. It would have, and it could have gotten better reviews had it been done with Justin and Wayfair and their vision, because it would have been more cohesive. I did ask like about the director's cut and what the differences were, but they didn't know. No one knows. No one knows. I guess I'm not surprised. What are your thoughts? Are you surprised to hear about this? I know that once someone is at a level of like Ryan and Blake at WME, they are kind of the controlling factor of WME at this point because some of the highest profile celebrities that they have. A lot of the reasons why you're seeing people not come out against them and the media placating to them is because there's fear in the industry of going against the PR machine that is WME. Because the way that the people I've talked to have described it is that WME uses bots for their people. They use fake accounts for the followers. They ramp up follower numbers. They use bot accounts. And they even believe that WME does some astroturfing themselves. That was the allegation. So they think that's why Blake is blaming this on Justin, because it's what WME apparently does. Oversaturating, changing narratives, trying to make things look bigger than they are. They said there's so much manipulation behind the scenes to make celebrities appear bigger than they are. They said that if you probably looked at Blake's followers on Instagram, there's no way that she has actually 47 million followers. A lot of them, they said, are probably fake. And they do that, they inflate numbers for a lot of the people. So there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in Hollywood. And finally, again, absolutely no sexual harassment. Blake will be humiliated if this goes to the jury because of all of the footage that they have. And no one can believe she has taken it this far because there's no evidence. And there's mountains of evidence and documents to disprove it all. And that's why Brian Friedman is so confident and he's not sweating any of what's happening with the lively parties right now. They know they will win and that Blake will be just destroyed if this goes to trial. So what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed and click the bell to never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.